In a continuation of our first examination lab, I'm going to take you through the developmental sequence from prone all the way to standing, as far as functional movements go that you'll see in the pediatric population. The reason this is an exam lab is because we're going to start all of our exams with an observation of function. So if you picture a little one in their home environment or preschool environment, you'll see these kids moving in and out of positions just through everyday activity, play, activities of daily living. So you need to understand what the developmental sequence is, and really more importantly, the purpose of this video is to get you familiar with the terminology so that when we go to talk about the developmental positions in both lab and lecture, as well as seminar, you'll be familiar with the terms and we'll all be on the same page relative to that piece. I will talk a little bit about alignment as far as what optimal alignment is, but understand that this is just an introduction and we will pick this up in much greater detail as we move through the stages of motor control activity, as well as in other labs and in lecture. I will ask that you consider what neutral alignment is, what you know alignment is from your posture assessments last year. So those are already well established in your toolbox. So please think about that in consideration of pulling that forward as to what would neutral alignment be as we move through these developmental positions. Motor experience. So I'll ask that you clear your environment because I want you to actually move through these positions as well so that you can feel what it feels like to get in and out of these positions, as well as what it feels like to maintain the position. Okay. The first position we'll discuss is prone on elbows. When you think about development and the sequence, you should be in consideration of what the base of support is. When you think about base of support, you're really looking at any area of the body that's in contact with the surface for this activity. So when you consider prone on elbows, my base of surface starts all the way here at my fingertips at the open hand, goes all the way through my body down to my toes, as those are also on the surface. From an alignment perspective, neutral alignment would be considered with your eyes forward, looking straight ahead. You really want the shoulders to be back and your scapula to be seated on the thoracic spine. Your pelvis should be in contact with the surface, but your upper trunk should be actively engaged in holding the posture. Your legs would be straight and your feet are plantar flexed so that the top of your foot is on the surface. From here you could discuss prone on extended arms, which, as the name suggests, you're just up on your elbows. Again, you need the trunk to be active and all the other pieces of alignment would still hold true. You want the scapula seated on the thoracic spine, and you could observe this by looking at the patient's back and making sure that you're not in observation of winging. Going back down to prone on elbows, when you think about moving in this position, you can be moving forward or backwards. This is called crawling. This is crawling on elbows. You might also hear this termed combat crawling. You could move in a circle. That would be called circular pivot or prone pivot. So a variety of ways to be mobile in this position. Okay. The next position we'll discuss is called quadruped. Some folks may refer to this as hands and knees. You'll hear that as a more casual term, but this is quadruped. This is 4-point quadruped because my base of support consists of all 4 limbs being on the surface. If we discuss 3-point quadruped, that would be with 3 points on the surface. You could also discuss 2-point quadruped, which would be having 2 points of contact on the surface. As far as alignment goes for quadruped, you again want your spine to be straight. So you would have a neutral spine throughout. As far as your upper extremities go, you want to have a slight bend in your elbows. And again, your hips and knees should be at 90 degrees and your feet, the top of your feet should be touching the surface. In quadruped, you also have the option to move. When you're moving in quadruped, this is referred to as creeping. There are a variety of creeping patterns that we will discuss as we move throughout the semester. What I'm demonstrating right now is a 4-point reciprocal creeping pattern. Okay. Next, we'll discuss sitting. I'll review 4 types of sitting and their names associated with it. This is called short sitting. When you're thinking about sitting in the base of support, you want the individual's legs to be approximately shoulder width apart with their feet flat on the floor to help create their base of support. You're looking for a 90-90 alignment at the hip and at the knee. So as you can see, I'm at a little bit greater than a 90-degree alignment, so I should have something under my feet to raise the surface to meet me so that I could achieve that neutral alignment. You want the pelvis in a neutral position and the spine straight. Upper extremities can be resting on your lap. So this is called short sitting. Long sitting, the derivation for that would be to have your legs extended out in front of you. Again, you're thinking that you want this 90-degree angle at the hip. Neutral rotation, neutral position at the foot, and some slight plantar flexion depending on if the patient's on the surface or not. The spine should be straight and you should be having just a restful position on your legs. And this is long sit. When you think about side sit, you're having both feet point to one direction. So this is side sit. You're having external rotation of one limb and internal rotation of the other. You can think about side sitting relative to having your arms propped or having them in your lap. And as you move through those 2 options, you'll see the difference and the requirements for both vary in terms of what's required from your core. You could be side sitting to either one side or the other. This is called ring sit, so your legs are forming a type of ring. You're going to be abducted, externally rotated, and varying degrees of hip flexion would be considered within, knee flexion would be considered within normal limits. Your pelvis should still be neutral and your spine straight. Your hands could be resting on your lap. If you're thinking about an individual child, you might see a child playing in this position. So this is ring sit. The last position I'll show you is tailor sit, or you might hear this term circle sit. So you have your legs crossed underneath you, abducted, externally rotated, knee flexion greater than 90, and your feet are just resting. Hands are resting on your lap. Again, you want the pelvis to be neutral and the spine to be straight all the way up. So this would be termed circle sit or tailor sit. So this position is called tall kneeling. From an alignment perspective, your base of support should consist of your knees all the way through the back of your legs, and that your feet are touching on the surface on the top, through the top of your feet. Your legs should be approximately shoulder width apart. Again, you're looking for a neutral pelvis and a relatively straight spine. Your shoulders should be actively engaged so that your scapula are seated nicely on your thoracic spine. When thinking about moving in a tall kneel position, you could move forward or backwards. This is called knee walking. You could knee walk to the right or knee walk to the left. You could also knee walk in a circle. From here, you could easily transition into a half kneel. So this is half kneel on the right, and the other side would be half kneel on the left. When considering alignment in your base of support, you still need your feet to be flat on the floor. Ideally, you're trying to achieve 90 degrees on your raised leg at both the knee and the hip. Your pelvis should be neutral, and you'll see a variety of placements of the arms, from hanging at the side or having hands resting on one leg or both. You shouldn't be seeing attempts necessarily to gain stability here. That would be a compensation, which we will get into later in the semester when we discuss atypical development, but they could be resting just on that limb. next developmental position we'll discuss is called modified plantargrade. So it's not quite standing because it's modified, and it's modified in that I have some part of my body on the support surface in front of me. So right now I'm being supported. My base of support is inclusive of my hands making contact with the surface, as well as my lower extremities. From an alignment perspective, you're still thinking that you want the lower extremities to have a base of support that's shoulder width apart. You're looking for neutral alignment up the leg relative to rotation, and you'll see slight hip flexion depending on whether or not you're propped up on your hands or your forearms. You'll see children also use their chest on the surface, which would create more hip flexion. If you're up like I am, you want the scapula to be active and engaged. So you want to see that seated on the thoracic wall. From modified plantargrade, our next developmental position would be standing. And you're very familiar with optimal alignment in standing relative to your base of support being shoulder width apart, all the way up through a neutral pelvis, a straight spine, and shoulders that are back, head that is forward. So those are the developmental positions. You have the terminology for that. As I said in the beginning, this is just an introduction to these terms. You'll get a lot of practice with this in lab, and we will discuss in detail what optimal alignment is as we move through the stages of motor control activity next lab. Thanks.